Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 3 and see how this specific phone holds up in 2023. Now, funny enough, this was a fairly decent upgrade coming from the Z Fold 2, and it was honestly a very decent phone overall. I liked it a lot. Was it perfect? Clearly not, but I think it was a very good phone that, Samsung made, and I'm really happy with the way they've been making these types of devices. Unfortunately, I have noticed, and a lot of people have noticed, that a lot of folding phones that Samsung has made have these weird types of issues where they just boot loop or sometimes the screens don't work sometimes, and it's a very, very concerning thing, and I'll talk about that throughout this video. But if you want to pick up some phones I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the Galaxy Z Fold 3, on the front we have two different displays. So on the very front cover display, you have a 6.2-inch dynamic AMOLED display, and on basically the unfolded side, you have a 7.6-inch foldable dynamic AMOLED display. Now, both panels are 120 Hz, which is beautiful. I don't know too many people who use this phone with the cover display. They're usually using this phone with the, basically when it's unfolded, and that is, I think, a really cool way to use this phone. I mean, if you're willing to go ahead and kind of have it unfolded all the time, that'd be great, but really you're only folding it when you're done using it, as far as I can understand. Now, I think the displays on this thing are very good. I think Samsung has made some pretty decent improvements, basically, making their screens a little bit bigger and kind of removing the bezels and kind of annoyingness here and there. And I think Samsung's done a pretty good job with this display overall. Again, it's not a perfect display. I still feel like their Galaxy S23 Ultras, their S22 Ultras, S21 Ultras, those types of phones do give you better displays. But I look at the Z Fold 3 and I don't think it's a bad display at all. Like, it's a pretty good display, definitely when it kind of comes down to it. Now, we do have a USB Type-C port on the bottom, which is great. And on the back of this phone, depending on how you look at it, you are getting that display, but you're also getting that frosted glass back, which is something that I love seeing on these types of devices. When you are actually getting a phone like the Z Fold 3, this is a phone that still feels very premium. It is very similar, I would say, to like a Galaxy S21 Ultra in a way, in terms of the premiumness, especially when you consider the fact that in 2021, Samsung was putting plastic backs on their S series, their cheaper ones, their baseline models. That was something that was very, very concerning. I have no idea why Samsung even did that in the first place. They've since reverted that. But with the Z Fold 3, you are getting the premium feeling model, which is awesome. Some other things, you are getting IPX8 water resistance. So you can get up to basically 1.5 meters of water for 30 minutes, which is cool. I've seen some drop tests of this phone. I've seen some durability tests, and it seems fairly durable, but it's a heavy phone. So if you're going to drop it, chances are you're probably going to get some scratches on it. On top of that, you also have to remember that with it basically folded, you are kind of protecting that inside display. So that is kind of a nice thing to have. And when I look at this phone, it's honestly a very nice touch. So in terms of the outside, very, very premium feeling phone, a unique device. Nobody really has a phone like this, so that's also a pretty crazy thing. And I think that's kind of how this phone kind of holds up in that, specific area. Now on the camera side, this thing has a triple camera setup on the back. So it has a 12 megapixel wide angle lens, a 12 megapixel telephoto lens, then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, and on the front, it kind of, you have two different cameras. So with the cover display, you get a 4 megapixel sensor there, and then on the, when it's unfolded, you're getting that 10 megapixel wide angle lens. Now you can do 4K at 30 on the front, you can do 4K at 60 on the back. And the one thing I've always said is that even though you're spending more money on the folding phone, like on the Z Flip 4 or even Z Flip 3 or the Z Fold 3 in this case, you are actually getting worse cameras on this phone than even like a Galaxy S21 during this time. So on an S21, I feel like you're getting not only better cameras, you're getting a better front-facing camera as well. You can do 4K at 60 on the S21, where the Z Fold 3 could only do 4K at 30. On top of that, the Galaxy S20 could do 8K video on the back, which is the phone the year before this, where the Z Fold 3 can only do 4K at 60. Like, that's still fine, that's still very good resolution, but for a phone that is more expensive than the other phone, and the main novelty of this phone is the folding factor, you are actually giving up some things when you are getting a phone like this. So it's not just a better phone every area because it's more expensive. It's a better phone in some areas if it's useful to you. Other than that, you are kind of sacrificing a little bit of that camera quality if you are buying a phone like a Z Fold 3 in this case. So take it as you will, but I'm personally not the biggest fan of the flipping and the folding cameras. I've always felt like Samsung kind of puts watered down cameras a little bit on these sensors compared to their mainline builds. So keep that in mind. It's a good camera, but again, compared to their, S series, these are definitely not as good as those ones. Now, in terms of software and longevity, this phone is still going to be supported for a few more years. I would say this phone's going to last as long as something like a Galaxy S21. It basically had the same chipset inside. So because of that, with this type of phone, it's still going to be here for several more years, probably like at least another 2 years, and then maybe like a year of security updates on top of that. So this phone's not really going anywhere anytime soon per se, but there's probably going to be a point where a Z Fold 3 may end up feeling like a little bit older of a device, mostly because, hey, this phone came out ending kind of 2021 and, didn't last as long as some other phones that came out kind of around it, but it is what it is. There's not much we can do about it. One UI has gotten a lot better, and this thing is in line of getting One UI updates fairly, soon too. So whenever the S21 gets an update, this thing's probably going to get an update around that. So moving on to the performance side of things, this device has that Snapdragon 888 chipset inside of it with 12 gigabytes of RAM on every 2 model that this phone basically had. And the one thing I like about this specific phone was that, in my opinion, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset was a very decent chipset. I did a ton of gaming on not only this phone, but on tons of phones with that 888 chipset, including on One UI. And a lot of the games and a lot of the applications that I actually played, including a lot of emulation, was on phones with like 8 gigabytes of RAM, like on the S21. So with this phone for the Z Fold 3 having 12 gigabytes of RAM on a fairly good chipset like on the 888 one that we have here, that's a very good chipset to have. And in my opinion, just from that perspective, it is amazing. I love that, and this phone's performance is pretty good. I would say the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset we have now clearly is like going to be the bigger difference here. It's going to be the bigger phone, but I do feel like this one is still okay, and if you're okay with having like a good performing phone in this day and age, you're going to be perfectly fine. But I will say maybe in the next year or two, maybe if you had the newer Snapdragon 8 Gen series, maybe you'd be, in a better situation, but I still think this type of phone is a good performing phone. I sometimes even think the Galaxy S20 and like the Galaxy S10 are still pretty good performing phones too right now. So take it as you will, but this phone's performance is actually pretty decent. In terms of battery, this phone had a 4400 milliamp battery inside. You had wireless and reverse wireless charging inside of it, which was pretty cool. And definitely when I look at a phone like this, I mean, it's a good size battery, but I feel like, again, Samsung could have put probably a bigger size battery in these phones, considering like their Ultra series had bigger size batteries. So to kind of sum up this video, what I'll tell you is I definitely do look at a phone like the Z Fold 3, and I'm a big fan of this phone. I like it. It's not perfect though, and it would not be a phone I would buy myself. But if you like a folding phone, these are good because they've already been depreciating in the used market quite a bit, so you can just buy them from there. But the problem I had with the Z Fold 3, just like how I have with every Fold, is that you're getting a folding phone, but you're not really getting any other cool features, right? You're getting like a bit smaller size battery compared to some other Samsungs. You're getting a worse camera on this phone. The only thing I like about this phone maybe is like the folding, aspect to it. Other than that, I think I'd rather save some money and just buy the Ultra series of that year rather than buying the Fold phone of that year. So that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.